This is so exciting. I just finished recording what you're about to hear with Dr. Sarah and Finn, and they make up the podcast. It's a channel, it's a YouTube channel, and it's called Leaving Crazy Town. I mean, if that title is not the best ever, what is? Because really, that's exactly what it's about, too. It is about empowering people to learn how to see and visualize and process their past so that their future and their present state is not chained to past behaviors. And that's just such an incredibly empowering set of tools to have, right? And not only that, but they're so much fun. I mean, you're going to hear this, but we were all like talking over each other, which was fantastic. And so Dr. Sarah, she's a clinical psychologist and she's worked in the addiction field for 30 years. She recently published a book called Crazy. So like co, get it? Crazy? Love it. Okay. And the subtitle is One Psychologist's Recovery from Codependency and Addiction, a memoir and a manual for freedom. Who doesn't want to read that, right? Fabulous. And then Finn, so he's a sober tax attorney by day and a codependency recovery YouTube channel co-host by night. So, I mean, that's fabulous. He has a really interesting background. And then they met in 2020 and they met on a Zoom meeting. What? Like in a 12-step Zoom meeting. And they decided, they were going to create this online codependency recovery group focused on solutions. And you're going to get a little taste of it today. And I'm so excited. Like, I feel that feeling when you've got just like this dopamine running through your body and a little bit of adrenaline. And I just had the greatest chat with them today. And it just left me wanting more. I literally felt like we were chatting for just a handful of minutes. And then by the time you knew it, it just flew by. So I am absolutely thrilled to bring you this episode today. And with that, please enjoy Finn and Sarah from Leaving Crazy Town.
Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. A Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison.
Okay, greetings, compadres. Well, I have just given the intro for these two, but I am thrilled once again to let you know that today I have Sarah and Finn on here, and they have the Leaving Crazy Town podcast, amongst the other things that you just heard about. And so I have to tell you both, Sarah and Finn, how excited I am to have you on here. I just have been looking forward to this. I started listening to the podcast, really enjoy your style, and it's just an honor. It's an honor to have you both here today. And so thanks for coming on.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And so with that, and either one of you can start, I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind just kind of unpacking for us what led you to today, how you guys met, how it all kind of unfolded and transpired.
Bob, why
Sarah.
don't you take that one?
Why don't you?
Well, because
All right. Well, I'll just start. So I'm in recovery, and I actually met Sarah on a Zoom meeting that my wife and I started right when COVID hit. and I hadn't met her before. At the time, I was struggling with a lot of codependency with my wife because she had cancer and was doing treatments, and I was on a roller coaster with her. So we had started doing a little codependency work with some friends. And I just one day had this thought, oh, why don't I see if Sarah, because I enjoyed listening to her shares on our meetings and thought she had some really good insight. And we had chatted a little bit on the phone. I just had this intuitive thought to ask Sarah if she wanted to do some codependency groups with me. And I had no idea at the time that she was in the middle of writing a book and all this stuff. The thought just had come to me, and it was, yeah. So for me, like I'm a tax attorney. I don't work in the mental health field, but my experience, I grew up in an abusive home. Then I was in foster care where I was sexually abused, and then I always wanted to die from like as early as I can remember. And my first attempts at suicide were before the age of 10. Fast forward later, I'm in and out of mental hospitals on medication, very depressed, and finally end up into recovery. Like, I had gone to law school, done all this stuff because I was also using achievement as an addiction, like trying to feel better on the inside. And the fact that I live my life today after recovery and the work I've been doing in such a like joyful manner, like I suffered a lot as a child for various reasons. And today I'm just really happy. And I wanted to get the word out too when we started the podcast, like after we started to do the videos, like that recovery can be fun and you can laugh at yourself. And no matter what you've been through, you can have a wonderful, joyful life. And, I feel so blessed to work with Sarah. She's a lot of fun. We're very good friends. We tell each other the truth, even when we don't like it. And, her expertise and, the way we look at life is very similar. So it's just been a lot of fun. You want to add anything, Sarah? I'm sure there's a lot more to add,
No, I mean, we were on a meeting together and we both have a sense of humor and we just clicked. And then he asked me if I wanted to do a codependency group. And we started doing this group on Wednesday nights with a bunch of people from program. And then eventually, I don't know how we decided on doing the channel, but we're like, maybe we should do a YouTube thing. So we just started it and we've been having so much fun. And we both have that belief. I mean, part of the message of the book is really, I am responsible. And the thing about codependency is, my experience working with clients for 30 years and sponsoring people and in my own recovery, sometimes the codependent person is the person that's exhausted and overwhelmed and feels like a victim and is doing too much and, kind of is the person that people feel bad for. And I really saw in my own work that really that's kind of a lie. I mean, it's like I say in the book, it's the bad news and the good news. Like we can't save anybody else, even though people in recovery and just women in general and people in general, if you grow up in a crazy household, you want everybody to be okay because maybe you grew up in chaos. And the thing is, we think it's about the other people, but it's really about us and our own fears. And just lastly, Bud and Amy and I were talking about this, and we were just talking about this. It's because we feel so uncomfortable with what's happening inside of us that we want to make sure everybody else is okay. And that's really the definition of codependency. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that at the bottom of my codependency, and my wife was doing treatment, and she was having a lot of ups and downs emotionally from the medication she was taking. I researched a therapist for codependency help, and my first meeting with this woman, she said, if you could convince your wife to go on antidepressants, then you can feel better. And I knew right away, like, that's not the solution. I want to be able to not be on her roller coaster. I have my own emotions, but I wasn't even on my own emotional roller coasters. If she was having a bad day, I was having a bad day. It didn't matter how I woke up that day. And I understood that I can't make her, no matter what she did, I knew down deep inside that I could be happy regardless of what was going on around me. But I needed somebody to show me how to get there, How do I do that? How do I separate from that? And that
Right.
Yeah.
And it can start so early, Amy. I'm sure you know about codependency and recovery. And we were talking about this the other day that literally when we were like 3 and 5 years old, when your parents are fighting or there's chaos in your home, you so early on start thinking, I need to stop this and I need to figure out how. And, so kids can learn so early in a crazy household the delusional thinking that somehow I can fix this. When A, it's not our job. And B is we really can't fix it. We really need to help ourselves. But that's really where it begins. So, anyways.
I love that so much. And it's so true. And I think, as a parent, I am acutely aware of when I'll see my kids looking at the adults, just kind of sensing either attention is in the room or, there's something going on between like me and one of my older kids that's maybe like a little bit heated, or, we're trying to get our sort of points across and trying to communicate. And I think, many of us had those friends growing up whose parents, quote, never fought, unquote. And and that seemed so attractive to me because my parents were yellers. Sorry, mom and dad. But that's how they communicated. But I mean, and we all can use a little polishing sometimes in our techniques, but they were communicating. And then I had some friends sometimes who's like, their parents never fought, quote unquote, which may or may not have been true, but it always seemed like everything was buttoned up and perfect.
I have a lot of friends, Amy, that when they got older, their parents got divorced and they were so shocked. And when they were younger, they felt that something was off, but their parents never expressed it in front of them. And now they don't trust themselves because they're like, I can't understand, they're watching the environment. They're not seeing the fighting. Everything's okay, but there's tension in the air. And then you believe it's okay, and then boom, you're 25 and your parents are getting divorced and they never liked each other, and you're like, what?
Right.
Yeah. Sort of like seemingly without warning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And parent, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that, nobody is comfortable sitting around while their parents are like, screaming at each other kind of thing. And I think that that's such a strange, if my parents hadn't been, communicators in a heated way, shall I say, I would be totally shocked if they came to me one day and, they were like, hey, yeah, we're getting a divorce. I'd be like, where's this coming from?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Sarah, were you going to
No,
say?
No, I was just going to talk about, because you brought up parenting. That's a whole other arena that I see. Myself being a parent and friends and clients. Codependency with kids is an entirely, there are books written just on that. Because the thing is, for me, when my kid is upset, when I was a young parent, it was the most torturous thing to experience. So, codependency can come out in your parenting in all kinds of ways as well. It's obviously not just with an intimate partner. It can be with your parents. It can be with your kids. It can be with your friends. It can be with your boss. It can be with anybody where you just can't speak your truth, or let someone else just have their feelings, really.
And I think one of the things that Sarah and I always talk about on our channel and stuff is the fact that a lot of, like Sarah mentioned earlier, we believe that we're helping the situation because we love and care for this person. And it literally is just us feeling uncomfortable. We want the best for them, but it just becomes such an automatic response if you don't even look at it, you're not going to feel that, oh wait, I'm the one that's uncomfortable with them being sad and or them not getting their way or suffering a little consequence. And I've found now that I've separated myself a little bit from that, how much more effective it is for me to sit with a friend that's upset and not save them, and just learn to be comfortable with whatever's going on.
Right. Right.
That is
Yeah.
so hard to do.
Yeah.
And I love this topic so much because I feel like for a long time in recovery, I had some sort of catchphrases that I kind of hid behind as far as codependency was concerned. I'd be like, oh, well, you know me, I'm just a people pleaser. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not at all. Like, I
Right.
have a way that I want to feel if I'm being honest with myself,
Yes.
right? Like, I want this person to like me. Therefore, I'm going to bend to
Right.
whatever it is that person wants to do without owning my own truth and saying what I really would like to do. I'm
Right.
such a martyr. I'm just a people pleaser, guys. You know how it is. And it's like, no, it's really about me. Like, I want to
Right.
feel included. I want to feel accepted. And so therefore I'm going to behave
Right.
this way so I can achieve that feeling.
Right. 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 Yeah, I mean, and again, like I always say, a lot of these behaviors were brilliant. If you're 7 years old and your mom's upset at you and you decide to like figure out how to people please to make her okay, yeah, I mean, it's a great strategy at a certain age. But the problem is all those survival skills that we learned as kids, like, don't work as adults. Do you know what I mean? So you're absolutely right. It's like my people pleasing behavior is really out of a fear of tolerating something inside of me, whether it's fear that they're going to be upset with me, or fear that they won't like me, or fear that I won't belong, all that stuff. And, we joke about the Smartless podcast because Will Arnett said one time, people are never pleased. When you think people pleasing exists, but really, really, it doesn't please anyone, so because you're not
It's
being your truth.
Yeah, it can be quite annoying, but one of the sad things about being a people pleaser, and I'm not casting any judgment, because trust me, when I started looking at my own behavior in recovery, I was like, wow, no one, what was so profound to me was there was no one in my life who knew me, because
Right.
I would become what they needed. I would do what they needed. If they wanted Italian food and I didn't like it, I love Italian food. So I can't think of any food I don't like. But I would go along with it to make them happy. And,
Right.
in relationships, I would do whatever my partner wanted. And I started to see a pattern of how I was a lie. And that's lying. Like, it's not pleasing a person. No relationship I was ever in did somebody truly know me, because I was
Right.
never my true self with them. I couldn't tell them what I wanted, what I needed. There was no separation. And, so that, and literally I'm 55, and that's my goal today. That's what I work on today. I was working on it with my wife, and she passed away. But we got to a good place where I finally felt seen.
Right.
And then she passed away shortly after. And now I'm dating, and my big thing is to just be uncomfortable and be honest. And,
Right.
say no, because the damsel in distress, if you watch some of our podcasts, you'll hear that is my biggest hook. Like, it's because my mother was an alcoholic who was constantly bringing people home. I was always trying to save her, fix her, and as soon as I see a woman upset in front of me, I drop everything. I got it. What do you need? And I'm trying really hard just to be like, nope, we're not doing that today. And it's not fair. I don't want to be in a relationship with someone or friends or family or whatever and not have them know who I really am, even if it's simply what I want to eat or not. I'm willing to compromise at times, obviously, but I'm not willing to just pretend that I like something or don't like something or want to do something, because to me, it's lying about who I am and who they want to be with the person they're choosing to be with, not some person I created for them.
Right. And, the other thing that we talk a lot about, well, in the book, I talk about this and we talk about on the channel that people don't realize is there are severe consequences to
Mm.
you when you're this way, because there's a real disconnect with what you really need and what you really want, which creates a real disconnect in the relationship. And also, it's a real source of building resentment and anger.
Oh, yeah.
And that's super uncomfortable for a lot of people. But if you deny your own needs and you put someone else first, month after month, year after year after year, you're going to become a rage machine, whether you're aware of it or not. And that rage is going to come out in the relationship, either covertly or overtly. So that's another, let alone physical illnesses, depression, anxiety, let alone all the other consequences. So it's not just this simple little thing of people pleasing. It's a huge deal that really affects us.
Mm-hmm.
And I know from doing our groups, a common theme is most people, when they're starting this work, they have no idea even what they want. So
Right.
they may not even know they're agreeing to something they don't want to do because they've never gotten in touch with what they actually want or need.
Right. Yeah.
It's so
Yes.
true. I've seen this a lot too with older folks who may have, lost a spouse or something, and then it's like, I don't even know what kind of car I do want to buy because I don't know
Right.
what kind of cars I like. Or
Right.
and yeah, I think it's it can put you sort of totally on your back feet. Like, I don't even know what's happening to me right now or who I am. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And it's interesting because you're just reminding me of some clients I've had or people I've known all over the years who say something like, I don't know how much money we have, and they're like, they've created this dynamic in the marriage where they see themselves as a victim, like, well, he handles the money or she, and yet I'll say, well, what do you get out of it? Well, I don't have to be responsible. I don't have to know. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, when you kind of ignore, having certain information in your relationship, I mean, again, it's on a continuum. It's kind of like you get something out of it also, even though you can come across like you don't want it. It's really looking at that deeper cut of what am I getting out of this?
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm off on a tangent, but yeah.
No, you're not,
Yeah.
because I think it circles back to that whole, and I have played that role many times in my marriage and in my past relationships or in my friendships even.
Yes.
And one friendship comes to mind where we literally joke that we are like, there's a stereotypical, oh, she's the man in the relationship, or what would be the previously typical male roles, and I'm
Right.
the female. And we just kind of laugh about that. But at the same time, it's sort of like, at what point, and we've had this conversation, at what point is it kind of unhealthy? Like, today, just for fun, you're going to drive and you're going to come pick me up or whatever it is,
Right.
and just to challenge ourselves to get out of that box. But yeah.
Yeah.
Quick question. Let me circle back to one thing. Finn, you were saying sitting with a friend and being uncomfortable if that friend is upset, or sitting with somebody. And can you tell us more about that? Can we unpack that a little bit more? Because I think that's just a common thing that people want to swoop in and at least, here's the tissue box, if nothing else, and let me, care for you.
I've had lots of opportunity to sit with people actually that were dying and or were given some really bad news. And my wife, actually, the tissue box, she would sit, and she was going through a lot, and I would hand her the tissues or try to hug her, and she's like, you just not, she was going to share something, and she said, you just knock it out of me, don't do it. But I've had an opportunity to sit with people. One friend whose child was actually a victim of violence and was stabbed several times, and she was upset. And what I do, I feel uncomfortable, and I want to fix it, and I want to say it's going to be okay. And you want to come up with all these lines that are going to make the person feel better, make me feel better. But what I've been doing in those situations is just not say anything. Sarah and I actually just did a video. We haven't posted it yet on this, about when you know someone that loses someone, like the only thing to say, or if you call someone upset, the only answer really is to either say you don't know what to say, or I'm sorry you're going through that, or what do you need from me? Not, they're in a better place, they had a full life or whatever. But I don't know how I end up in these situations. I went to visit someone at Mass General that I didn't know very well, but it was down the street from my work. And I walked in right after the doctor had told this young 40-something-year-old woman that her cancer had spread to her brain and she didn't have much time left to live. And I literally walked in. It was somebody I played tennis with. I walked into her room minutes after the doctor left. And boy, did I want to run out, But I just listened to her. I listened to her concerns. And, before I would have been trying to done anything to avoid it. And today I can listen to my friends. Don't get me wrong. I'm not 100%. If somebody calls me and I haven't really gotten into a place where I'm feeling centered and they start telling me bad news, I immediately go into fix it mode. I'll just be like, oh, did you do this? Did you do that? And I've also been on the other end of that when I call someone to tell them how I'm feeling. Like, I have a doctor's appointment coming up, and I was telling someone that I was nervous to go there because it's at the hospital where my wife died, and I haven't been in there since. And their response was, oh, well, you're happy about your doctor's appointment though. And I just didn't feel heard, So my own experience of being in touch with how things happen and how I feel when they happen to me has made it easier for me to sit and listen to other people. And it's uncomfortable, but I listen to this person, the speaker, who says, a sad person sitting with a sad person isn't bringing a sad person out of sadness, or getting angry with someone who's angry isn't going to bring them out of their anger. It's just going to be two people sad, two people angry, and fixing doesn't fix it either. Like, people need to have the space to, go through what they're going through. And, I know today it's not my job to fix it. It's just my job to be a friend to them by letting them have the space to experience their life. I don't like anything that's uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm a relief-seeking missile like there ever was. But, today I've just learned to tolerate it. And the only way I've gotten there is by actually going through it and not opening my mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really hard to sit and watch someone cry and not hand them tissues.
Yeah.
Like, that is a hard thing. And people say, oh, it's kindness, it's this, it's that, but my experience with other people is that they feel as though you're shutting them off from their feelings,
That part of their process is just getting it out in the way that they need to get it out, right? And it's hard. I think that's hard. I constantly, as a mom, and I'm in 12-step recovery, and I don't know what I would do without some of the tools I've learned there, because constantly as a mom, one of my kids was having a roommate issue in college, and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to call the housing department, and I'm going to this, and I'm going to that, and I'm going to go ahead and take care of it for you. And then, and there was a part of that child who was like, oh, that sounds pretty good. Have mom just swoop in and rescue the situation. And I caught myself, and I was like, I can't do that, because this is not allowing you the opportunity to go and handle this. And so let's talk through how you think you want to handle it, and what outcomes could possibly be as a result of those choices. And, and it's just hard as a parent, because you want to go, okay, first step is go talk to your RA, and you file a complaint and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there are time and spaces for some of these nuances. Like, is this life or death? No. Like, this child, we can have a conversation, and I said child, it was really a young adult, but we can talk it through. And just like I wouldn't tell somebody else who's a peer of mine, well, you need to, I'm going to contact the resident advisor, to talk through those things. And boy, that's tough sometimes to
Mhm.
just, it's like a knee-jerk reaction and want to fix, right? Like,
And I don't have any children. I have stepkids, but I didn't raise them. They're adults. And my experience as a child and watching other people is that empowers your child. And
yes,
no matter how old they are, they need support, but they also need to learn to do it on their own. And if you listen to people, you'll often hear them say, "Oh, they think I'm an idiot and I don't know how to deal with it." And that's the response, is that they end up thinking they're not capable and they need to be rescued. And that's not really helpful in the long run. But you have to be uncomfortable. I often say I could never have had kids because my niece and nephew, one got hit on the playground, one got bit. I was ready to take out a toddler because I'm like, oh, God forbid I ever had kids, because I'd be in jail for trying to, or they'd never be allowed out in public because I wouldn't want them to get hurt, because I'm not sure I could tolerate it. So I can't even imagine, and especially having 8, I like that just would
Yeah,
have been torture. That would
we've
have been
discussed
torture to
this.
me. I would have
We
had to
don't know how
hire.
you're still walking around, Amy.
I'd have to
well,
hire bodyguards to protect them. Like I just couldn't deal.
right. It's a
Yeah.
day-to-day thing. But I will say, what's funny though, it is, I do have to remind myself, the goal is to raise an adult. Like that is the goal.
Okay.
And so therefore, some of these things, it's like, hey, yeah, these are not like things that I can just tweak for you all the time. I remember being upset, going into the pediatrician's office once, and it was like at age 12 now, you sort of don't have, in my state, you don't have rights as a parent
Right.
anymore to, get access to some of their medical.
Mm.
And I was just like appalled. And now I look at it totally differently. I'm like, wow, how empowering for that kid to learn to advocate for themselves in a safe space, and how important that is, because I think that, as a 47-year-old, I still have trouble doing that sometimes, owning
Right.
my own situation and feeling like I can say, what other plans could we explore, look at, or I'm feeling, this or whatever. And I just never felt agency to do that. I was Generation X, and you kind of just did what the doctor said all the time. And on that note, Sarah, I'm wondering, are you okay talking about your cancer that you had? And did you have to learn how to advocate for yourself, or were you pretty good at that naturally with your background? And
Yeah, I mean, God, you got me thinking about the parenting stuff, but I'll
sure.
no, that's okay. You know what? The cancer really for me was just this huge lesson in what was the message. Because the message was I'd been trying to leave a job for like 5 years and I couldn't. Speaking of it, it reminds me of Gabor Mate's book, when the body says no.
Yeah.
It's like, that whole book literally is about codependency and how if we don't address stuff, it comes out in our bodies. And for me, it was like, God does for me what I can't do for myself. And I got the breast cancer. And I think I say this in the book. I remember driving to radiation and having the thought, I would rather go to radiation than to work. And I remember at that moment thinking, holy shit, like I have to leave this job. But I mean, the crazy thing is that it took that to realize like how unhappy I was and that it was time to move on. So, I mean, it was a really great experience. I mean, I was lucky it was only stage 1, but it really was this time of reassessment. And it got me out of that, because you do have a wake up call when you get those diagnoses like, wow, what am I doing with my life? I've got to do something that I really want to be doing. So that was the big benefit. Yeah. But I just wanted to validate you though around the kids stuff, like, because, Finn and I have talked about this. I mean, setting limits and letting our kids experiencing their lives and not taking away their pain is literally, I think, the hardest thing in the world. So, I mean, good for you. I mean, and it is with 8 kids, I can imagine it's just a constant practice. So,
Uh,
I give the example all the time of this mother that is of a friend of Bo's in high school. Her mother, his mother, I got together with and had coffee when the kids went off to college. And she wanted to get together with me around some addiction thing. And she literally told me, and I tell this story because it's so horrifying, but I'm sure it's not horrifying to some mothers, that she was still calling her kid in the morning to wake him up. And he was a freshman in college. And like, I just felt so sad because the kid is still being infantilized. And she was a parent that he had some struggles in junior high school and just became very overprotective and controlling, but never really saw that it was about her own fear. And
yeah.
I just thought, like, what's the message this kid is getting? He's a freshman in college, that he can't wake himself up. So, I mean, that's an extreme example, but that's an example of parents doing things that they think are helpful. So it is huge. Anyways, that's the last thing I'll say about parenting, but it is big.
It's big. And I think, the other fear,
Yeah.
and this is about it, the parenting thing kind of spurred this in my head, but it's actually sort of just applicable to life, but is for me, the fear of judgment from other parents. Like, oh, they don't do enough for their kid. Depending on, I know some demographics are more expectant of parents to like step in and, be fighting these battles. And then there are other demographics that are like,
Right.
why is there a parent here? And
Right.
so learning to navigate like that space of, all right, let me watch this scene for a little bit, see what's going on here, talk to my child, kind of figure out, there are some parents out there who will like, call you up and say, hey, your kid said this to my kid on the playground today. Oh, okay. What shall I do about this? And that whole, are you saying that I should be just that
Right.
expectation of different things? And that's a whole nother thing, is attaching myself, taking things personally, and then realizing, oh, this doesn't actually have anything to do with me. But
Right.
finding that space is difficult, I think, at some points, and in relationships in general.
Yes. Yeah,
I see
absolutely.
that a lot, not just with how the children behave, but achievements. And
Yes.
like I know my parents, my mom had to quit school and sports, and she was like, be the best or you're an embarrassment. And it was like she drove us to play. I mean, I enjoyed it as a kid, but she drove us to play sports because she couldn't. And then I watch my friends that are parents today, they all are like, there's this like who one up each other, or my kid did this and my kid did that, and it's like, yeah, that's not you. That's
Mm.
your, it would feel better if they were talking about like how proud they were of their child, instead of this is the badge of honor for me because my child did this. And it's unfortunate that you have some parents who get wrapped up in that, and their self-worth is wrapped up around how their kids are doing. And I always get concerned for those people when their kids grow up and leave. What,
I,
where are they going to get their value from?
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I even had to recognize, for me, so I probably stayed too long. So I love that, Sarah, you mentioned, that you sort of got a message through being sick with cancer that like, oh, this job maybe no is not for me. I held a pretty big volunteer position at my kid's school for far too long. And, whatever, I could tell you the reasons, but, they're kind of, some of them are a little bit dicey. But in the end, what I realized was, I've been at this now for a decade, and I'm not going to change what's going on here. Like, there is nothing that I can do that is going to, they're not going to wake up at this place and just be like, oh, well, thanks for bringing that to our attention. We've totally changed our policies and our ways and the foundation of like what this place was built on too. So, there's that. And it's like, I had to get out of the way. It was time for me to just be like, yeah, I think whether I admit it or not, agenda pushing to an extent that there was, and I was pretty, at the end, I was really clear on it and it was pretty healthy. But it was like along the way, there were some real points of like, yeah, no, I'm trying to push an agenda here. And it was such a dance for me to learn that of like, nope, it's time for me to back out of this mental parking space here and like let somebody else handle this who's not, like emotionally attached to this particular crusade and that was hard to do, but I think also pretty invaluable learning. And it's something, I'm not like cured of that. I keep practicing that in the other areas of my life where it pops up. And I'm not always great at it, but it's like, I will recognize now, like I'll feel it in my body, like, yeah, you're making this about you, and having that space to just realize it and kind of treat myself with care and then pump the brakes. That was something I didn't know about, like prior to getting sober and therapy and all of that. So, yeah.
I mean, literally, you just gave this great example of, I'm not saying this is the way it was, but like all of us have stayed in relationships too long, have stayed in jobs too long, have stayed in situations where we believe that I'm going to somehow change this situation.
Yeah.
And again, maybe we could for a while and then it stopped, or maybe we couldn't. But that's such a huge part of Code Crazy that I'm going to keep kind of compromising myself and denying what I think or what I need. And I'm going to keep going at this thing, even though I'm not getting the results I need or the person or the situation isn't changing. That's just like such a huge part of what we're talking about here. We have a friend who literally has been in this job and she's working like 40 hours a week, overtime every week. And finally, we were talking to her about like, what's this about? Like, you're tortured at this job, but you won't leave. And she had to really look at, geez, I have this fear of the financial insecurity. I have a hard time speaking up to my boss. I have a hard time asking for what I need. And looking at her own kind of pathology or beliefs that keep her stuck in a situation that is not going to change. And she finally now is going to start another job in the next couple of weeks. But it's taken like this suffering and this kind of thinking that I'm going to figure it out somehow and change them rather than changing me, which is really what the codependency, healing is about. Go ahead, bud. Sorry.
Yeah, changing the institution. To circle back when you were talking about your child, Amy, advocating for itself in the medical and how you still, struggle at times. And what I was thinking is, and it ties into like everything we were saying is, if I'm advocating for someone else, it's so easy. I can step up to the plate, be the voice of, the underdog or whoever needs whatever. But when it's my stuff, that's when it's torturous and it's hard to do. And, when Sarah was talking about relationships, one of our videos, I believe I talk about, I went on a blind date with a woman. She moved in. 2 years later, we're still together. She's cheating on me, doing all kinds of drugs, which I'm not going to say I wasn't because I was an addict. And then one day we're watching Schindler's List and it's like 2 years in, I've been living with this person and she tells me she thinks Hitler had some really good ideas. And I'm like, but, this is a person I'm living with. And it wasn't until a friend of mine needed a ride and she told me to tell him to walk. that I was like, what am I doing with someone who would be so mean to my friends? Not mean to me, not, not, I wasn't leaving that relationship for me. I just
Mhm.
realized when somebody lashed out at my friends, like now I'm going to advocate for my friend by leaving this person. And, I couldn't say, and I got to tell you on that blind date, I did not like her,
Mm,
but
Right,
I had no ability to speak up for myself. And it was
right.
so insane. And it's that deep that when you talk about being in front of a medical professional or a boss or whatever, I mean, today I can, but I had to get a lot of this awareness from recovery and looking at myself, doing the work and being like, wow, this is who I am. I never once said how I actually feel, about
Right,
anything. It's
right.
just crazy. Never mind advocate for myself. You know.
it's so
But I
Today
thought you were
I
gonna just, oh, go ahead.
today I'm like me. No.
I
All right,
thought you were gonna tell
I
this.
might be a little bit overboard.
I love
I
it.
thought, I thought you were gonna tell the story about the dating, like in the last year that we did the episode on, like a way
Which
how we can deny our own needs.
oh the
The beach.
yeah, I know. I was
I gotta
I was
hear it
talking.
now.
All right, well, I'd never. My therapist is like, oh, you should try dating, and now today it's the dating apps, which I've never been on in my life, and so I'm chatting with this woman on the dating app, and so my whole profile is. I love the beach. I'll do like my favorite date would be anything at the beach, and I'm going on, and I want I don't know, I'm really spiritual and all this stuff. And this woman's thing was, and just a little bit about me, I don't watch the news. I don't, I engage in, trying to change the world by I vote, I read the facts, I do what I have to do. I go out and I be a kind person and try to be thoughtful to others, but I don't get involved in the negativity on the news. I just don't, I hate it. So I'm talking to this woman and I said, I have to confess, I think she said she was like an expert at Trivial Pursuit or something. I said, I have to confess, I'm not very good at trivia. I just don't hold the, science and nature I'm pretty good at. And she wrote back, well, I have to confess, I hate the beach. So I'm like, okay, we can work with this. And like, I'm sure there's something we'll have in common. And I said, oh, well, what do you like? She said, oh, I think she was like an obsessive news watcher. She watched all these like news channels all day long. It was like her favorite thing. And Sarah's like, oh, who are you talking to on the app? So I showed her and she's like, well, she's an atheist and you're like super spiritual. She hates the beach. She loves the news. You hate the news. So why are you still talking to her? I'm like, oh, I don't want to hurt her feelings.
Right.
Right? There it is.
The
So I'm
Goda's
like,
attitude,
red
right?
flag, red flag, red flag. We'll just swipe,
Right.
I always say swipe the red flag right to, get the green flag. And so finally, now I'm feeling shamed because Sarah notices how I'm still like, I'm doing a codependency channel, but I'm still totally crazy.
Yep.
So I wrote to her and I
Get
said,
that.
upon reflection, it seems as though we don't have that much in common. And she wrote, oh, thank you for being honest. End of story. Like I had created the whole thing in my head about how she's gonna be hurt. Like she never even met me.
This rings
See
true.
what this stuff is. I mean, that's what's so amazing. Like you've never even met this person and we're afraid to hurt their feelings. I mean, that's why this stuff is so intense.
It is intense. And meanwhile, then there's me with the previous volunteer position who would come home from these meetings just pissed off and just
Right.
and like in a bad mood. And then who pays the price for that, right? Obviously I do, but then I'm spreading that because my peace is gone because I've let it be robbed, right? And it's sort of like I know that this thing needs to kind of like be coming to a real decision point, right? So this was like at that point where I was just like, just coming home just upset all the time. And it's like, oh, okay, so I'm willing to pay that price for like for what? For like a bunch of, strangers and some things that in the grand scheme of life are kind of like small potatoes, right? Like
Right.
I think if you stuck it out, you could have made some change.
I should go back.
That's the thing is we don't, it's hard to just be like, wait a minute, I'm not enjoying this. And
Right.
sometimes that's all it is. This is taking over my life like a cancer because I'm
Right.
miserable. I don't enjoy it. I'm entitled to be happy. I
Yeah.
I don't
Yes,
have to save everyone. I don't have to save the world. And and ultimately I didn't want to let this woman down or hurt her because I want to be liked.
Right.
Uh,
right.
you know, like,
Well, that's
and
what we do a lot on the channel is we do a deeper dive where we're talking about a present situation, but whether it's you with your job or Finn with this date, it's always about the past. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's always about some old fear or some old situation that this is reminding us of or whatever that gets reactivated. And we try to kind of connect those two things for people.
I love that because
Yeah.
sometimes these things are they're just hard to see, right? And I mean, I know, you guys have a lot of recovery in your backgrounds. And I know that for me, until I got into recovery and I got a therapist and I started really looking at the roots under my behaviors. It
Yes.
was like I couldn't see any of it. I was just like, everything is everybody else's fault and I'm the victim at all times.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always tell my friends who are like new to this stuff, when your reaction to something seems over the top, it's probably not the current situation. And it's usually something that's deep seated. And then the other thing, that a tool that I love to use is I'll write out what happened. What am I telling myself about what happened? And what do I actually know? Because my
Mm,
mind, that's a tool I learned in recovery. Like, my mind creates a lot of stories, like this woman's going to be hurt, or that your
right.
situation. I'm not sure on the specifics, but I've been in situations where I'm going to change something and it's going to be for the better. And I'm telling myself, like, I'm the only person that can do it. And it's worth sticking it out because I'm making change. And if I just keep plugging away, it's going to, and it's not the reality. The reality is 10 years later, nobody's doing anything about it.
Right.
It's not resolved. And how
Right.
much of myself do I want to give to that?
Right.
Right.
And or also, yeah, I actually do. I have some power in this. Like I can choose to, take my business elsewhere, go somewhere. It's not like I'm just like chained to this thing. I'm chaining myself to this thing,
Right.
is the cycle of insanity, like thinking that it's going to change.
Right.
One of
And
the first, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Sorry. One of the first things I started changing in the way I speak when I started doing this work is removing "I have to," because that has been a thing. And you hear it from people all the time, like, "Oh, I can't do this because my kids need this, and I have to do this, this, and this."
Mhm.
And, or I have to do this for them, or I have to run this meeting, or and it's like, do I have to? So now I remember, like, if I'm going to go, hang out and help my stepson for the weekend, instead of running around saying, "Oh, I have to do," I'm choosing to do it. And because one of the things, and I'm sure Sarah will agree with me, we find a lot of people we talk to, they don't even realize they have a choice. Like
Mm.
you're saying, people don't know they have a choice. They're so driven by what's behind the scenes that it doesn't feel like you have a choice.
Mm, yeah.
Yep. And what the perception is sometimes about what is behind the scenes, when sometimes I don't really know the facts. I'm assuming the
Yeah.
facts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of codependent behavior too, like you guys are describing, feels urgent. You know what
Yes.
I mean? It's like it feels our systems react in this over the top way. So it feels like a 911. And yet 99% of the stuff that we believe is a 911 is really not. That's an Al-Anon expression. They have that saying, how important is it?
Right.
And so often it's just not that important, but we initially think it is. Yeah. We feel like it's a
Certain
leg up.
Certainly feels like it.
Feels like
Yeah, it does. And that is so true. And actually that is a bit of a warning button for me when I see myself, like when I get that sort of panicky feeling rise
it.
up and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this must be fixed now. Like that is always my like, all right, you need to pause, first of all.
Yeah.
Like, don't react. I had something happen last week, even where it was like, I mean, got this text message and I was just like suddenly spinning, right? And it was like, all right, I know you want to fire back. And really, what you need to do is nothing right now. Just let it lie. Let it, just kind of simmer down and like handle it later. And that is what thankfully I did, instead of causing more damage. And really, when I react in the moment on those things, even still today, like you'll get this side of me that is just childish and selfish, where I'm just like, and take this and take a good look at this face because you're never going to see it again. Like I go there, and it's not even what I really mean, but it's like because the emotion is there. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
I've read messages from people that I had already, maybe have had an issue with before, and I read them incorrectly when they come in, and
yes.
it may not say what I suddenly am like viscerally reacting to. And if I don't pause, they're going to get a whole side of me that they don't need, and then later I'll look at it and be like, oh, that's not what that said.
right.
But I am like,
I've done that too. Or it's like I'll start reading an email and I'm like, oh, I know where this is going, and it's not at all where that was going. But I think I know. And yeah, no, I don't. And so learning to have that, like, all right, let me just read what it says, first of all, before I get all like spun out and out of control. I mean, just
But
saying.
that's a great tool. I mean, you just said what is such a great tool in this recovery is when we're having an overreaction, that's the sign. That's the sign that something else has gotten activated that really has nothing to do with the present moment. So pausing is one of our tools, which is a great one, because we don't see reality when we're in a reaction. You know what I mean? In analysis, they call it an abreaction, which is like an old wound getting activated in the present, and that's what happens to all of us. You know what I mean? I mean, some old things, gets activated from some email, and then we just, I mean, it's really the human condition. Probably most human beings are walking around reacting and not even aware that it's about the past.
The best is when you get a little separation from it. You can laugh at it.
Yes.
Like, I know a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, I reacted this way, or I feel shame. Like, I'm done with shame and guilt and all that stuff. Like, I call my mind the Tower of Terror, because I mean, I went to a 7-day silent retreat, and me being silent is like, for one day, was a miracle. And I decided, I just was driven to go to this retreat. And for 7 days, we weren't allowed books, compute, like nothing. You could have a journal. And my mind was telling me like a tree fell on my house, and then the tree went through, and like, I just kept creating over those 7 days, no contact with anybody. I literally created more and more things, but I got to see how my mind worked. And I got to the place where I was like, oh, that's a good one. What else you got? And it would just create all these traumas to try to get me to like react and save myself from this, isolation and silence. And today it has given me, and the pause gives me separation from it. And I find it very humorous. Like, I know that it's my mind, it's my ego, and it's creating stories to protect me, especially based on my history. And I laugh at it today. And, I'm constantly sending Sarah texts about, guess what I thought, I got a headache. My mom died, suddenly dropped dead at 59. I have an aneurysm. I'm ready to rush myself to the hospital, call an ambulance, over a little thing. And I laugh at it today. I'm like, yep, I'm dying today from whatever. It's not real. It's just the runaway train of my brain, so the Tower of Terrors, it's a Disney ride. It's scary, but it's not real. And all that thinking that I have from my history and the way I create stories, or I want to react to things, I just laugh at it today. If I cause a little damage, it's frustrating, and I have to, reach out to the person that I reacted to. But I love the idea that there's no shoulds for me, and I'm not going to run
Right.
around in shame with how I think, because I have no control over that. Pops into
Right.
my head. What I have control over is how I respond to the world or react, you know?
Yes.
I love it.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Dr.
Yeah,
Sarah, do
go
you think
ahead.
there's hope for us? Because I do the same thing.
Absolutely. I mean, we said in the book, like I think every chapter, one of the tips is just notice. And we say that a lot. I mean, once you know that your thoughts are just thoughts, that they have nothing to do with reality, I think that's completely liberating. And I think when I first got sober, I was really into Buddhism and I read all these books for those first 10 years. And so much of that is about that's just thinking. You know what I mean? And our thoughts and our thinking are usually from the past. So once we kind of have that awareness, we can get some spaciousness around our thoughts and also have compassion for ourselves. I mean, that's something that if you're a perfectionist or, so many people in recovery are so hard on themselves. It's like
Yeah.
just having compassion. Like you're doing exactly what you were taught to do. There should be no judgment because literally your system created this stuff and now you're just reacting from that system. There's no right or wrong or good or bad. You're just doing what your system most naturally would do. And so if you can kind of get some spaciousness around that, you can, get
And
a little.
find some friends you can be honest with, like Sarah and I are constantly back and forth about this stuff, and we have a community of people we can share, like, oh, this is what I was thinking,
Right.
and it doesn't have to become like this huge doom and gloom thing. Like, no, it's not reality. And my friends don't have to fix what I'm thinking, like we can
Right.
laugh about it. And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
So now, okay. First of all, I could talk to you guys literally all day. I feel like I've been talking to you guys right now for 5 whole minutes, and all this time has flown by. But as we wrap up, I am wondering what is next for you guys? I mean, this is I feel like we just barely tipped the iceberg here. There's so much I could talk to you guys about. Do you guys run groups in addition to your channel? Do you do coaching? What is kind of next? What's on the horizon?
We're really kind of creating that as we speak. I mean, we keep doing the videos. We have done some groups and kind of if people go to the website, they'll, there's available, consultations or groups. We kind of create those as people kind of reach out and need them. But we're really just trying to spread the message through the channel. And I've been doing some podcasts and kind of keep kind of doing more and more to get the message out there. Because I think not just with people in recovery, but just people in general, I don't think they're aware of how their past is running them and how it's manifested in this codependent behavior. So we're up for anything.
And we're starting a new series within our channel called Ask Dr. Sarah. So people can write in and ask questions or, tell us things they want to hear about.
Right.
As
Yes. We keep coming up with new ideas and kind of trying to expand the channel. So that's kind of where we're at.
Well, I think it is fantastic because, I mean, I know for me, when I did my first 4th step in recovery, that was just a shocker to me. Like, oh, what is my part in this? I mean, was like a whole new thing, because I just was so convinced that everything else was everyone's fault. And I feel like the work that you guys are doing is so important and so valuable to the human experience in general, because it brings up that oh, wait a minute. No, I have prerogatives in this situation. I have power in this, and it might not look the way I want it to look or the way it, may appear at first glance. I may have to dig a little bit, but I do have choices. And I love that because I just feel like that's a really common theme for people my age and north, is that, well, I had this happen to me and this happened and this happened, and therefore
Right.
I am the way I am and I'm stuck. And, maybe not even
Right.
realizing that they're, stuck, but just it's so empowering to keep growing and to keep
Yes.
an open mind and considering, gosh, well, maybe it's not what it first appears.
Well, I mean, that's
I
why
was sorry.
I was going to say, buddy, and please, guys, going to say the reason I love doing the podcast with Finn is because literally, I don't think I've heard a worse history in my 30 years of doing work with people.
Wow.
And yet he's someone that takes responsibility and wants joy in his life. And so nobody can tell me that they've suffered so much that they can't change. And, because he's such a great example of that. So anyways, thank you, Amy. Yeah.
I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say that a real joy of doing the work that we're doing is some of the people that started in our first group and then other groups have been in, the changes in their life that I have seen. People have gone from not feeling like they had a voice in their marriage. A couple of people, there was one woman who was told something by a parent in 7th grade about a career she couldn't have for whatever reason and shut it down. And she's actually I got goosebumps. She's starting in her 40s. She's, her daughters are older and she's going to a training for that job that she told her parents she wanted when she was in 7th grade and they told her she couldn't do it. And she went into a career they wanted her to have. And all the voice, like she's just learned to have her voice, and she was afraid her family wouldn't support her because she's been a mom and a wife and, working at home, and they rallied around her. She was afraid to talk to them. I mean, we've just seen so many things with people just learning that they have a choice, and opening their mouth and finding out that the people around them that really do love them want what they want to. They just need to speak up and say what it is.
Amen. Yeah.
And I love that because, it's also such a great reminder. You're never too old to change. Like never, ever to make a different decision, take a different path, or go to therapy, work through things. And I mean, it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to tell both of you what a joy it has been, even talking to you this much. I feel like I don't want to hang up. I feel like I could just, we could just go on and on because these are such important topics that allow us the ability to see our own light and have that light shine as humans. And so I just want to thank you all for coming on today. I just appreciate you both so much. And I cannot wait to watch your channel and your work continue to shine and continue to rise. And I'm just thrilled. So I'm
same
here.
Same here. I'm so grateful. Yeah, I'm so grateful that you had us on, Amy, and I'm looking forward to watching your podcast grow. And it's been a real pleasure to get to know you a little bit and chat. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah,
absolutely. And we'll have you
Sarah and I
on our channel.
Yeah, you got to come on our channel. We love to probe.
Yeah,
and
we love having guests.
We have a lot of fun, and that's Sarah and I love adding to our tribe. So
it's great. My gosh, you guys, thank you so
my
much.
friend.
Good blessing. All right, everybody. So if you are listening, I just want to remind you to, from the 80s, be kind, rewind. Thank you for the honor of your time. Take what you like and leave the rest behind.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. You can keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.